It certainly is great to be here. And as we said outside, this year has been somewhat of a blur, I will tell you. It's kind of went very fast, and it's been almost like, 2 6-month segments, I will say. I felt since June that as a government, the message that we've been wanting to get out to the public is one now that is being well and better understood within the public. So it is great to be here today to share this luncheon with you. Always a pleasure. The boards of trade, as you would know and has been mentioned by Des, you play an important role in our province. It allows the business community the opportunity to speak with a common voice to your federal, to your provincial, your municipal leaders. And I can tell you that when the Board of Trade speaks, that MPs listen and that MHAs listen. So on behalf of my caucus and my colleagues that are in Cabinet, I can tell you that we have clearly heard what the Board of Trade is saying. Now, we can argue about the accuracy or the necessity of your dead clock, but it's not possible to deny that it is raising the financial and the economic issues that we face in our province. It started the conversation, and it is a conversation that as a province that we need to have. So today I would like to take a little time to provide you with a bit of a briefing on the current state of the economy in our province. Also talk about our way forward, which is a vision for sustainability and growth in Newfoundland and Labrador, and how that vision statement positions us to appropriately manage the challenges and the opportunities that lay before us on the horizon. But before we get into that, I'd like to take a moment to discuss an issue that I've been hearing quite a bit. Specifically, that our government has been somehow dragging its heels in dealing with the financial situation of the province. Now, it's true that it took us some time to launch our vision for sustainability and growth. But as many of you in this room would know, when the financial model is failing, when you're not meeting your sales targets, your margins are shrinking, or you're not getting the necessary return on investment that's required to operate your business, the worst thing you can do in that situation is to engage in a very knee-jerk, quick reaction. It's a pretty common mistake for people new to operating a business, and seemingly a pretty common misconception among some of the opposition and political pundits these days as well. It was Albert Einstein who was given credit for saying, and I quote, that if he had 1 hour, given 1 hour to save the world, that he would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes finding a solution. Now, for me, I think that's cutting it a little close for my taste, but I think you've got, and you would agree with the fundamental concept of what we're talking about. It is more important to understand what's going wrong than running around trying to solve a problem that you really don't understand. So let's kind of define this problem for a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the state of our provincial economy before I get into the vision on growth and sustainability. Early in the mandate, one of the first duties as a government that I had was to inform the province that Newfoundland and Labrador was facing a projected deficit of $2.7 billion. That's really on an $8.5 billion budget. Now, I'm not going to get into the economic jargon, but I will say this. $2.7 billion is way more than our province could afford, and it was a massive deficit that we were facing. So we had to take some measures to deal with the deficit issue in the short term while we kind of got our heads around what was causing this drastic deficit. If we hadn't taken the revenue actions that we did, it was highly likely that we would have faced significant higher costs of borrowing, which really would have been compounding the financial mess that we were in. So as we fast forward to today, through the appropriate cost-saving measures and an increase in revenue, we were able to reduce the deficit to $1.5 billion. Still not great, but it is much better than $2.7 billion. And it is important to remember that we're not the only ones saying that we got this province back on course. The credit rating agency of DBRS just recently stated that they felt that our government was taking credible action to deal with the financial situation, and our credit rating by them was remained at an A. S&P, Standard & Poor's, well, they held our credit rating at an A level. And they were praising the decisive action that we took as a government to deal with the financial realities that the province was facing. So while we were making the necessary changes and stabilization on the revenue side, we took a long look at the expenditures of government. And there are a couple facts that I would like to put out there just to put this in context, to put it in perspective for you. For 9 of the last 10 years, our province has had the highest revenue per capita amongst all provinces. During those 10 years, our provincial revenue grew by 22.7%. But during the same 10 years, our provincial expenses grew by 58%. So you see where I'm going with this. We don't only have the highest revenue per capita, but we also have the highest expenses per capita. Now, for some people, they will tell you that's due to a smaller population spread over a large landmass. And when they tell you that, they'll kindly suggest that you don't look on the map to places like Saskatchewan and Manitoba, because they're dealing with the same issue. And the demographic fact that we're the unhealthiest province in Canada doesn't help either on the expense side. But it really doesn't explain the huge growth that we've seen in expenditures. So the issue simply is not one of revenue or population health or population density. While they contribute to the problem, the primary issue that we're facing is one of spending. So it's kind of like a lotto winner. If we had all this money coming in the door, but there was really no smart plan on how we should spend it. And when you don't take the time to define your problems, then you will always react. Your gut reaction will be, is throw money at a problem. And that's how you end up with what we've been calling a strategy of strategies. And I'll just talk a little bit about that for a minute. In 2015, the PC government, the former administration, released 10 new strategies. And they were directing significant resources to another 7. And they were actively developing new strategy plans. So the 17+ strategies, all with tailored programs, and most had special offices within departments. Quite frankly, it was a bit of a mess. There was no coordination, no master plan. All of these little strategies, they were fighting for attention inside a bureaucracy that really didn't know what to do with all of them. And I would say that if it had gone on much longer, what we would have some strategy office that was set up for the management of strategic issues related to strategy offices. That's exactly where this was going. And of course, as business people, we've seen all this before. We've seen the flashy advisors with their special plans for profitability, with supposedly some secret knowledge that only a privileged few at the top would see. Or we see a middle manager who comes out of his or her office instructing their staff to dive down some new rabbit hole, all in the service of an overall strategy that hasn't even been shared with many members of the team. So what happened to the provincial government was really no different, and that's what happened to any number of businesses in our province. It is as common in government as it is in business. When you have increasing revenue, what you see here is it really hides all matter of sin. So it's only when the revenue side dries up that you start to see who's not effective in their job or who's not managing the resources wisely. And that's exactly what happened when the price of oil went down. The revenue dried up, and the mess was presented in the clear light of day. So, you know what the problem is. You've got the idea about the current financial state of the province. Now the question is, what do we do about it? So I'd like to pretend that we had some big, fancy, well-invented, some new approach to governing or managing. But in reality, what we did is we put together a vision for change. As many of you know, the fundamentals of managing change, well, they can be pretty simple. And probably one of the most popular books out there on this end, and one that many of you have no doubt been familiar with, is John Cotter's Our Iceberg is Melting. Now, it's not a big fancy book. It's kind of a little fable. It talks about penguins living on an iceberg. But what he does is he defines about 8 steps for effective management change. And I'm just going to briefly run through some of those. Step 1 would be to establish a sense of urgency. Now, in my world, $2.7 billion does that. Secondly, it would be to create a guiding coalition, and we've done that with our cabinet table and our caucus, and all our colleagues have really taken this problem between their teeth and they've They've been digging into it. Step 3, develop a vision and a strategy. We can check that. Step 4 would have been communicate the change vision. And I think that one is where I'd like to spend a bit of time. Our way forward, which is a vision for sustainability and growth in Newfoundland and Labrador, that's our vision for a robust and effective government and how we can meet the needs of the people of our province. It's a document that we feel passionately about. The vision is simple. It's together we will achieve a strong, diversified province with a high standard of living. The determination and drive of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians will be supported by responsive, innovative, and efficient programs and services. And events like today are one of the ways that we will communicate out our vision. It's our goal to ensure that the people of this province can connect with the vision and understand its underlying goals. Another step would be to empower employees for broad-based action. Now, there's a distinction between having a vision and having a strategy of strategies. A clearly defined vision allows individual employees to assess their actions to align with that vision. It gives common goals and a common purpose. So instead of a strategy office bolted to some department in some haphazard manner, all departments must work together to support the execution of the vision. So when employees have a clear focus and we orient ourselves around that broad-based action, we can achieve the fundamental types of change that we're looking for. Another step would be generating some short-term wins. And usually when the government talks about generating short-term wins, well, what they do is they take credit for something that's already taken place. It's a little magic that they like to use sometimes. But here's what we will be doing differently. Our vision document contains a clear action plan for the first 6 months that identifies achievable goals for the province. And we're going to passionately pursue these goals. And in 6 months' time, we're going to report back to you on how we did. We're confident in our ability to achieve these goals, but if we don't, we're going to tell you why we didn't, and we're going to also tell you what we're going to do about it. Another step would be to consolidate gains and produce more change. The vision document includes clear targets for months 6 to 18 and clear guidance how we get beyond the 18th month. So to continue our efforts to modernize the way our province actually does its work, we're going to create the conditions of success, and we're also going to challenge ourselves to succeed. And then we're going to build upon that success again and again. I'll also tell you this, it won't be flashy. There won't be some grand pronouncement of vision accomplished from the steps of Confederation building. It's going to be we approach and achieve on a day-to-day basis. But it will be based on the kind of fundamental, get-it-right achievements that we've had over the past year. And in case you've missed some of them, since it is the birthday, I want to take a few minutes to talk about and just do a quick rundown of some of the accomplishments in the last year. The Independent Appointments Commission. It was a signature bill for us, and through the efforts we announced the new board of NALCOR just yesterday. We've eliminated the compensation for parliamentary secretaries, we've reduced the size of cabinet, we've also cut ministerial pay, basically a 20% reduction in the number of deputy ministers in government. We were at the same number as Ontario, by the way. We've seen substantial reduction in the number of assistant deputy ministers within government. We've reduced by 30% the number of people involved in communications. We've also been able to further reduce the deficit this year by another $250 million that came out in Minister Bennett's mid-year update. We've been able to maintain full-day kindergarten, even in this economic environment. We've been able to increase the income supplement for seniors and for low-income people, some of the most vulnerable that we have in our society. We've worked very closely with the federal government in how we deal with LIFO, and a policy that has a huge impact on rural Newfoundland and Labrador. We've been able to work with the federal government to get the announcement on the Marine Rescue Sub-Centre. We've held a very successful forum on local government, significant funding for Memorial University and the College of the North Atlantic, $570 million in infrastructure throughout the province. And I will tell you, most of the jobs associated with these infrastructure funds will impact the province next year. We've put in safe zones for people that are seeking abortion services within the province. We've worked with our Aboriginal leaders and put in place an expert advisory committee on how decisions are made surrounding Muskrat Falls. This was long overdue. The groups now will be making decisions based on science. That's how these decisions will be guided. We've been able to get a $2.9 billion loan guarantee enhancement for the Muskrat Falls project. We've announced a public procurement, placing an emphasis on value for money, simply just not price. The province should expend its funds in a way to create benefit and value for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So we're amending and putting in place this legislation. We've made a commitment to work with the Board of Trade and other associations as we now begin to develop the regulations attached to that legislation. Just this week we announced a reduction of 6% in the average workplace NL assessment rate. This brings it down from $2.20 down to $2.06 on every $100 of assessable payroll. So that actually puts about $11 million into the employers, back into the employers in our province. We've seen a number of new lost-time injuries. We know that that's decreasing, so more people are actually going home safely from work each day. So that means more money stays in your operations. So today, we're pleased to be able to tell you one more announcement and one more commitment on the way forward vision. I know Karen Olford is here as president of the municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador. I saw Craig as I was coming in. And I want to thank M&L for the work that they have done on this particular initiative. And it's one that we've talked about for quite some time, and that is municipalities. They were the ones that have been telling us, as many leaders across the province has, is that they need Crown land for commercial and residential development. But the payment of the market value of these lands places a financial burden in getting those developments started. So today our government has put in place a new policy to make lease-to-own arrangements available for municipalities seeking those Crown lands. These arrangements actually provide flexible payment options that allow municipalities to defer payment to the Crown lands until the new development is generating revenue. So it's really a strong partnership with many of our communities in our province. So I've just given you a list of the things and accomplishments this year. So despite all the unexpected difficulties that we faced over the past year, and the time we took to clearly define the problem that we have faced, we still did quite a bit of business in this province this year. Another step, I would say, was about consolidating those gains and producing more change. And I will conclude, I guess, by finally saying it's time to anchor those new approaches in the culture of government. And that will be a tough one. Because if you want change really to take hold, if you want to be change, instead of just doing change, you've got to figure out how to make it last. It's only by anchoring new approaches in the culture of government that we will be able to appropriately face the opportunities and the challenges that lay ahead. And quite frankly, as Des said, that this is not something that we can do alone. This is the type of change that requires commitment from politicians, civil servants, and the public. Now, we can work on the first two, the politicians and the civil servants, but we'll need your commitment for the latter. An organization like the St. John's Board of Trade, comprised of people who understand the scope, the implications of the problems that we face, well, you are well positioned to help us inform the public about the need to reform how the government does its work. Doing things efficiently. What that means is that we're not wasting taxpayers' money. And I can assure you, the people that I know in this room, you are not interested in wasting money. So opportunities like this particular event today, they are important for our province, and these discussions must continue. So I'd like to thank you for having me here today to speak about the current state of our economy, talk about our way forward, our vision for sustainability and growth in Newfoundland and Labrador, and how that vision positions us to appropriately manage the challenges, but more importantly, take advantage of the opportunities that lay on the horizon. We've begun the process of reform. We've begun the process of change. And together, with your help as an organization, with your help as business owners, and with your help as individual citizens, we certainly will make our way forward. So enabling Newfoundland and Labrador to achieve a strong, diversified province with a high standard of living supported by responsive, innovative, efficient programs and services. That's what we're looking for. I am very optimistic about the future of our province, and I know we are now on the right track. So with that in mind, on behalf of all the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador, I'd like to wish you a great holiday season, and I do look forward to working with you in 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity.